The knowledge of time, the past, the present, and the future, can be both a blessing and a curse. For the burden of this knowledge might eat away at your doubts, fears, and worries, slowly consuming your mind until it overwhelms you. By looking into the Mirror of Galadriel, one could witness these visions in a convoluted manner, and this magic made it a very dangerous artifact. Hey guys, it's Carl here, and in today's episode we'll be unraveling the magic of the Mirror of Galadriel. So the Mirror of Galadriel was a large silver basin that was filled to the brim with water from Galadriel's fountain. Its look was quite deceiving to an ordinary person, for it might have seemed like a simple pool of water, though this would all change when Galadriel would breathe upon it. For her breath would activate it through magic, or at least what the hobbits perceived as elven magic, and this would allow the mirror to reveal visions of the past, present, and future. It's clear that this magic came from Galadriel and not from the mirror itself, though I suppose that there is a chance that the water of her fountain was particularly potent at absorbing elven magic, since after all, its water was also used to capture the light of Eärendil in the Phial of Galadriel. However, just to be clear, this is simply my own speculation, and I'll be discussing its powers in greater detail towards the end of this video. Now, even though Galadriel's magic activated this mirror, she wasn't completely in control of it. She could command it to reveal certain things, or to show her what others desired. Yet at times, it would also show things unbidden, and these random visions were often stranger and more profitable than anything you could wish for. It might seem like this was a great gift for anyone that was lucky enough to witness its visions, yet doing so would sometimes have dire consequences. The mirror would reveal visions from the past, the present, and the possible future, and sometimes it was extremely difficult to differentiate between these three. To make matters worse, these visions of the future weren't set in stone, they were simply a possibility that might never come to pass. And so these visions could sometimes drive a person to a panic of fear, as they would grow desperate to avoid or change this future by turning away from their quest. And in a sad irony, this choice to abandon their journey would lead to the catastrophic future that they were so desperate to escape. This is why Galadriel stated that the mirror is a very dangerous tool to guide your choices and actions. And we actually see how this fear consumed Sam's mind after he looked into its water. He saw Frodo lying fast asleep upon the endless stair outside of Minas Morgul, and he witnessed himself climbing up a winding stair as he looked frantically for something or someone. His next vision was even worse, for he couldn't tell if it was the past, the present, or the future, and he was helpless to stop it. He saw the Shire being industrialized, trees cut down, black smoke polluting the skies, and the burrows in his street being ravaged and dug up, while his father pushed a wheelbarrow carrying his belongings. Sam's spirit was crushed by this vision, and he was desperate to return home. And for a moment, he considered abandoning his quest and duty to try and save his father and the Shire, which he loved so dearly. It's quite poetic and true, that love is often the death of duty. Now, before we discuss Frodo's visions, it's worth mentioning that Galadriel had warned the hobbits not to touch the water, and I believe that this was because it would disrupt its magic. There is also another potential reason, which we'll see in Frodo's case, which I believe is quite sinister, though I think it's best that we discuss it later on in this video when we explore the mirror's power in greater detail. Since Frodo's visions are quite intense, we'll be using some quotes from the book to better explain them and break them down, and also to give some extra context. Far away, a figure came slowly down the road, faint and small at first, but growing larger and clearer as it approached. Suddenly, Frodo realized that it reminded him of Gandalf. He almost called aloud the wizard's name, and then he saw that the figure was clothed not in grey, but in a white that shone faintly in the dusk, and in its hand there was a white staff. The head was so bowed that he could see no face, and presently the figure turned aside round a bend in the road and went out of the mirror's view. So in this vision, Frodo saw Gandalf in white robes after his return as Gandalf the White, and this means that it was showing a future event, since Gandalf would only acquire these white robes at a later date from Galadriel herself. The vision now changed. Brief and small but very vivid, he caught a glimpse of Bilbo walking restlessly about his room. The table was littered with disordered papers, rain was beating on the windows. I suppose this could be from any timeline. Perhaps it was from the present, and Bilbo was worried and anxious about Frodo. Or maybe it was from his past, while he still lived in Bag End. Personally, I think it's far more likely to be from the present, while Bilbo was living in Rivendell, because otherwise I imagine Frodo would have specified, or at least been surprised, that he was seeing Bilbo once more in the Shire. Then there was a pause, and after it many swift scenes followed that Frodo in some way knew to be parts of a great history in which he had become involved. The mist cleared, and he saw a sight which he had never seen before but knew at once: the sea. Darkness fell. The sea rose and raged in a great storm. I believe we can almost say for certain that this vision was the great storm that consumed the island of Númenor and led to its fall. Then he saw against the sun, sinking blood-red into a rack of clouds, the black outline of a tall ship with torn sails riding up out of the west. This passage is linked to his last vision, reflecting the ship of Elendil, who led the faithful Númenorians through this great storm to the land of Middle-earth. Then a wide river flowing through a populous city, then a white fortress with 7 towers. The first city was Osgiliath, since the Anduin River flowed through it, while the second fortress was Minas Anor, which would later be known as Minas Tirith. And then again a ship with black sails, but now it was morning again, and the water rippled with light, and a banner bearing the emblem of a white tree shone in the sun. A smoke as of fire and battle arose. The ship was one of the vessels of the Corsairs of Umbar when they attacked Pelargir during the War of the Ring. Aragorn would manage to defeat them with the help of the Oathbreakers and the Grey Company, and he would use their ship to sail to Gondor's aid and to lift its siege. This vision represents that moment, for the ship carried a banner bearing the emblem of the White Tree, and the smoke and battle are those of the siege of Minas Tirith. And again the sun went down in a burning red that faded into a grey mist, and into the mist a small ship passed away, twinkling with lights. It vanished, and Frodo sighed and prepared to draw away. This is probably one of the trickier ones to interpret. Personally, I believe that this was the elven ship that would one day take the ring bearers to the Undying Lands after Sauron's defeat, and Frodo was witnessing this last journey of his. The way it's described is very similar to the ending of the books, when Frodo travels to the Undying Lands. The grey rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back. Now before Frodo could draw away from the mirror, it suddenly turned dark, a darkness of pure emptiness, and within this black abyss, a single eye appeared that slowly grew until it nearly filled the entire mirror. The eye was rimmed with fire, but was itself glazed, yellow as a cat's, watchful and intent, and the black slit of its pupil opened on a pit, a window into nothing. This sight was so terrible that Frodo stood paralyzed with fear as the eye rove about, searching for something. Frodo was certain that the ring bearer was one of the many things that the eye was seeking, but he was also aware that Sauron couldn't see him as yet unless Frodo willed it. The chain around his neck which carried the ring grew heavy, even heavier than a great stone, and the ring dragged his head downwards. Curls of steam were rising from the water below as the mirror's water grew hot, and once more Galadriel uttered, "Do not touch the water," and the vision faded, and Frodo stepped back in shock. Galadriel then approached him, and she told Frodo that she was familiar with his final vision of Sauron, for it was also in her mind, though it seems that this might not be through her mirror, for she goes on to say that her elven ring of power allowed her to perceive Sauron and know his mind, or at least all of his mind that concerned the elves. And even though Sauron had tried to see her thoughts, so far that door was closed. All of this makes me wonder, what would have happened if Frodo had touched the water while the eye of Sauron blazed within it? I believe that in that moment, Frodo was witnessing Sauron in the present, and if he touched the water, it might have established a connection between them, and Sauron would become aware of the ring bearer's identity. This theory is based off on how the ring reacted to the eye of Sauron, almost as if it was being called out and drawn to his presence, to a physical entity, and how the water started to boil and react to this vision. It just seems to suggest that this was much more than a simple vision for the ring to react in such a powerful way, and I find that it's eerily similar to how the Palantiri work. We know that the magic of the Palantiri and that of the mirror were both elven in nature, and they could be used to look at events and places in the present. What's even more interesting, and much less known, is that the Palantiri could also be used to see events from the past, if a strong user willed it, and I find this to be a curious similarity that they shared with the Mirror of Galadriel. And so perhaps the mirror could work in a similar fashion to the Palantiri, and if Frodo had to touch its waters, he might have established a connection with Sauron. Finally, regarding its ability to see future events, I believe that this might stem from Galadriel's own magic and power, her gift of foresight, which could be shared among those who use her mirror. There is of course some speculation here, though I feel that it really fits together nicely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this powerful artifact. Do you think its magic and power came from Galadriel, the water of her fountain, or from the artifact itself? And do you agree with some of my speculation and conclusion concerning its visions and the way it worked? As always, I'd like to give a quick shout out to all my patrons that choose to support this channel. Your help and support make this channel possible, and I really appreciate it. Particularly my Valar-Tier Patrons, Michelangelo and T-Gorman, and also my Wizard-Tier Patrons, James Stodgell, Andrew Boehmer, Mike Feeney, Roland Myrvold, and Tamar Baines. If you like the work that we do on this channel and want to support us, check out our Patreon page in the video description, where you can unlock some really cool perks. You can also support us by checking out our store and by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and joining our Discord server. All of these links can be found in the video description. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to join our fellowship today. Until next time, friends, when we'll once again explore the magical world and lore of Middle-earth.